The rain that changed the Earth. When the world rained for 2 million years. In the arid heart of the supercontinent Pangaea, far from any ocean, the history of our planet was about to change forever. An unprecedented phenomenon was about to be unleashed, an endless rain that would transform the face of the Earth and the course of life. Imagine a world dominated by endless deserts, where life adapted to extreme water scarcity and the climate was so hostile that only the toughest could survive. That was Pangaea more than 230 million years ago, an immense territory where the distance from the sea meant perpetual drought and constant challenges for the species. But beneath the surface, the real threat was brewing deep within the planet. Gigantic plumes of magma, driven by the energy of the Earth's core, were making their way toward the thin crust. In the region we now call Canada, a colossal volcanic eruption was about to initiate a chain reaction that would forever change the global climate balance. It was a type of eruption so devastating that, on other occasions, it had caused mass extinctions. However, this time the outcome would be different. The so-called Carnian Pluvial Event not only altered the climate, but opened the door to an explosion of new life forms. The rain began to fall and would not stop for more than 1 million years. The air became saturated with moisture, and the arid lands turned into jungles and wetlands, creating new niches for evolution. Instead of causing total extinction, the crisis became an opportunity. Biological diversity flourished, and among the greatest beneficiaries were the dinosaurs, who found in this new humid world the perfect stage to dominate the Earth. Thus, the storm that seemed like a disaster became the spark of a new era. Life, once again, demonstrated its astonishing capacity for adaptation and transformation in the face of the planet's challenges. To understand how a climate event can transform the destiny of an entire planet, one must first imagine the magnitude of Pangaea. This supercontinent, the largest ever to exist, gathered all known landmasses, forming a territory so vast that its center was isolated from oceanic influence and immersed in perpetual dryness. Rain was scarce, and for millions of years, only organisms capable of enduring aridity survived: resilient insects, reptiles, and deep-rooted plants. However, beneath this apparent calm, the forces of the planet were preparing a revolution. Massive volcanic eruptions were not unfamiliar in Earth's history, but the one that developed in the Wrangellia igneous province was special. There, for thousands of years, enormous volumes of lava flowed from the depths, covering kilometers and kilometers of land. Unlike other volcanic catastrophes that wiped out most species, this one had just the right magnitude to shake the balance, without completely erasing existing life. It is estimated that around 30% of marine species disappeared, but the true impact was the transformation of the climate. Carbon dioxide and other gases released by the eruptions accumulated in the atmosphere, trapping solar heat and triggering a global greenhouse effect. But the change was not immediate. As temperatures rose, the water cycle accelerated and evaporation increased, bringing with it constant and prolonged rains that eventually reached the driest corners of Pangaea. Rain, which under other circumstances would have meant destruction, this time became the engine of a rebirth. The old deserts gave way to lush jungles and vast wetlands, and the entire landscape was reinvented. This period marked the beginning of a new evolutionary stage. Species adapted to drought succumbed, while new forms of life took advantage of the newly formed habitats. Thus, the Earth began to vibrate with unexplored possibilities. The endless rains of the Carnian period not only reshaped the geography of Pangaea, but unleashed a true biological revolution. The soils, once dry and cracked, became saturated with water, allowing dense forests to grow and new plant species to expand. However, this abundance also brought unexpected challenges. The excess moisture caused the appearance of sulfuric acid in the atmosphere, generated by the interaction of volcanic gases with oxygen and rain, giving rise to acid rain that altered the pH of the soil and oceans. Many species, unable to adapt to this sudden chemical change, disappeared, but others, more resistant, took advantage of the chaos to thrive. While marine life suffered the collapse of entire ecosystems, with the disappearance of organisms such as ammonoids and crinoids, on land, the story took a different turn. Among the lush vegetation, the first dinosaurs found a perfect setting to expand. Species like Herrerasaurus, endowed with great size and adaptability, made their way through the new humid landscapes, displacing ancient reptiles and primitive mammals. Fossilized footprints in rock formations in South America and Central Europe reveal the unstoppable advance of these animals during the rainy period. The legacy of this phenomenon was not limited to fauna. The erosion caused by torrential rains shaped the relief of Pangaea, carving new caves and valleys. The dragging of minerals and sediments into the seas altered nutrient patterns and caused certain algae and microorganisms to proliferate, preparing the ground for new food chains. This entire process generated a dynamic of constant destruction and creation, where each extinction gave way to a new opportunity. Thus, Earth became a natural laboratory, experimenting with forms and functions, laying the foundation for the absolute dominance of the dinosaurs. Over the millennia, the intensity of the rains slowly began to diminish. The supercycle of storms, which had transformed deserts into jungles and seas into chemical laboratories, was coming to an end. But the mark left on Earth was indelible. The carbon and sulfur expelled by the volcanoes, along with the organic matter from the expanding forests, accumulated in new sedimentary deposits. The water cycle, now more vigorous, had eroded ancient mountains and deposited layers of fertile sediment in vast plains, facilitating the emergence of ecosystems that had never existed before. In the oceans, the drop in pH and the depletion of oxygen marked a point of no return for many species. However, certain microorganisms, like dinoflagellates, took advantage of the new environment and proliferated, giving rise to complex food chains. The diversity of life forms in sea and on land began to multiply. The continents, shaped by rains and erosion, now presented a dynamic geography, full of caves, valleys, and lakes, where new species found refuge and opportunities to evolve. The traces of those times are engraved in the fossil record and in the rocks formed during the Triassic period. The great environmental changes are reflected in the emergence of gigantic amber deposits, signs of stress in the ancient forests. The dinosaurs, which had begun as just one of many evolutionary branches, now dominated the landscapes with their variety and size, ushering in a golden age of adaptive radiation. Earth, after 2 million years of uninterrupted transformation, emerged renewed, with a warmer and more humid climate, air filled with new possibilities, and life brimming with evolutionary ingenuity. The story of the rain that fell for 2 million years is not just a curious anecdote of our planet. It is proof that great changes do not always come from immediate catastrophes, but from prolonged and seemingly uncontrollable processes that end up completely reshaping the face of the Earth. What for one generation of living beings was an endless crisis, for evolutionary history was an unprecedented opportunity. Thus, dinosaurs went from being mere survivors to becoming the undisputed rulers of a new world, while other less adapted species were left behind. This phenomenon reminds us that life, despite the most extreme challenges, is capable of reinventing itself and flourishing with astonishing resilience. With each extinction, the planet seems to write a blank page where the creativity of nature unfolds in all its potential. The eternal rain, far from meaning only destruction, was the spark that ignited a new explosion of life and diversity. Sometimes, what seems like the end is just the beginning of a new, more vibrant and complex stage. Today, humanity is the heir to those distant transformations, and in our own time, we continue to witness how environmental changes mark the rhythm of existence. If you were fascinated by this journey through one of the most astonishing events in the planet's history, I invite you to subscribe to Mind-Blown Space to discover together other hidden chapters of evolution and the cosmos. Share this video with those who love science and the mystery of our origins. Leave us your comments. What other geological or biological event would you like to explore? Remember, curiosity is the engine that moves humanity. See you in the next episode as we continue unraveling the secrets of the universe. Until next time, explorers of time and space.